If you look at the culture around us, we are told that transformation requires monumental leaps. We are told we need to quit our jobs, move across the world, or completely reinvent who we are overnight. But if you study human behavior, and if you look at how sustainable organizations and ecosystems actually grow, you realize that true, lasting transformation doesn't happen in massive explosions. It happens in whispers. It happens in the quiet, compounding choices we make when no one else is watching. Consider the 30 minutes rule. It is an incredibly simple concept, yet deeply profound in its execution. The rule dictates that you dedicate just 30 minutes every single day, without exception, to a single skill, a single piece of knowledge, or a specific area of personal growth. On the surface, 30 minutes seems insignificant. It's a fraction of your day, roughly 2% of your available time. Most of us waste that much time scrolling through notifications before we even get out of bed. Because it seems so small, we dismiss it. We think, what can 30 minutes really do? But this is where we misunderstand the nature of human progress. We live in a world obsessed with intensity. We admire the intensity of a grueling 14-hour workday or a massive burst of sudden effort. But intensity is a trap. Intensity is going to the gym for 9 hours straight once a month and wondering why you aren't fit. Consistency, however, is going to the gym for 30 minutes every single day. Intensity is flash in the pan-inspiration. Consistency is structural transformation. When you dedicate 30 minutes a day to learning a language, understanding a new industry, or mastering a craft, you aren't just gaining information. You are actually altering your biology. You are building new neural pathways. More importantly, you are shifting your identity. Every time you sit down for those 30 minutes, you are casting a vote for the type of person you want to become. You are telling yourself, my growth matters. My future is worth investing in. Let's look at the mathematics of this habit, because the numbers reveal a startling truth. 30 minutes a day adds up to 3.5 hours a week. In a year, that is over 180 hours of focused, deliberate practice. To put that into perspective, 180 hours is equivalent to taking 4 full-time college courses. It is enough time to read 20 to 30 deep, impactful books, or to learn the foundational mechanics of an entirely new career. While everyone else is waiting for the perfect time to start, or waiting for a massive block of free time that will never come, you are quietly moving ahead 30 minutes at a time. The reason most people fail to achieve their goals isn't a lack of desire, it's a lack of structural design. We set massive, ambiguous goals like, I want to be a great leader, or I want to start a business, but we don't build the daily mechanism to support them. The 30 minutes rule provides that mechanism. It removes the friction of starting because 30 minutes feels manageable to the human brain. Anyone can endure 30 minutes of focus. It bypasses our natural resistance to change. True fulfillment doesn't come from crossing a finish line. It comes from the quiet joy of progress. When you look back at a year spent honoring this rule, you realize the greatest transformation didn't happen in the skill you learned. The greatest transformation happened in you. You became disciplined. You became reliable to yourself. You proved that you have the patience to build something meaningful. It's not about the destination. It's about the compounding daily habit that reshapes who you are from the inside out. All it takes is 30 minutes. Keynotes of the speech, the fallacy of intensity. This consistency, true transformation does not come from massive, sporadic bursts of effort and intensity, but from small, unyielding daily actions, consistency. The compounding effect of time, while 30 minutes seems negligible daily, it aggregates to over 180 hours in a single year, the equivalent of multiple university-level courses or reading dozens of books. Identity-driven habits. Every daily commitment is an internal vote of confidence that reshapes your self-image and builds authentic self-trust, reducing cognitive friction, breaking large, overwhelming life goals down into non-negotiable 30-minute intervals removes the mental resistance to getting started. Progress is the source of fulfillment. Real personal growth and satisfaction come from the structure of daily progress rather than just reaching a final milestone. We live in a culture that deeply worships the spectacular. We are conditioned to celebrate the dramatic turnaround, the overnight success, the heroic 14-hour crunch session, and the massive, explosive burst of inspiration. When we decide we want to change our lives, our natural instinct is to think big and act with extreme force. We promise ourselves that starting tomorrow, we will completely overhaul our diets, read a book a day, and work out until we collapse. This is the illusion of intensity. Intensity is alluring because it feels important. It makes us feel like we are making a massive sacrifice. And because it is loud and highly visible, it gives us an immediate rush of emotional satisfaction. But if you analyze human behavior and the psychological architecture of long-term growth, you quickly realize a sobering truth: intensity is a trap. It is a highly inefficient, unstable strategy for creating any kind of permanent change. To understand why intensity fails, we have to look at how the human brain responds to sudden drastic shifts. When you introduce a massive shock to your daily routine, your psychological defense mechanisms immediately kick in. The brain craves comfort and predictability. When you force yourself through a massive, grueling burst of effort, like spending an entire weekend trying to learn a highly complex technical skill from scratch, you create an immense amount of cognitive friction and exhaustion. You might survive the weekend on pure willpower, But willpower is a finite resource. By Monday, your energy is depleted, your motivation has evaporated, and the sheer memory of how difficult that intense session was creates an intense mental barrier to ever doing it again. Intensity burns bright, but it burns out fast. It is the equivalent of going to the gym for 9 hours straight on a single Saturday and then wondering why your body hasn't changed when you look in the mirror the next morning. Deep down, we know that is foolish, yet we constantly apply that exact same flawed logic to our careers, our education, and our personal development. Consistency, on the other hand, operates on a completely different philosophical and biological level. Consistency understands that true structural transformation does not happen in a single day. It happens across hundreds of invisible days. When you commit to a small, unyielding daily action, like the 30-minute rule, you are working in harmony with human psychology rather than fighting against it. 30 minutes of focused effort does not trigger the brain's fear response. It does not demand massive amounts of raw willpower to initiate. Because the barrier to entry is so incredibly low, you can show up and perform the action even on your worst days, when your energy is low and your schedule is chaotic. This unyielding daily repetition is where the magic actually happens. In biology, microadaptations occur when an organism is exposed to a steady, manageable stimulus over a prolonged period. The body doesn't adapt to a single massive trauma. It adapts to steady, predictable pressure. The exact same rule applies to your mind. When you prioritize consistency over intensity, you are no longer relying on the emotional highs of inspiration. Inspiration is highly unreliable. It comes and goes based on the weather, your mood, or how well you slept the night before. If you only build your life when you feel inspired, you will build a highly fractured, incomplete life. Consistency replaces unreliable inspiration with reliable structure. It shifts the entire focus from the external results to the internal process. More importantly, it creates a compounding effect that intensity can never replicate. A single 14-hour burst of work yields 14 hours of output, followed by days of recovery and stagnation. But 30 minutes a day, executed with absolute regularity day after day, builds momentum. It builds neural pathways that become stronger and more efficient every single time you activate them. Over time, the action stops being a chore you have to force yourself to do, and it becomes a natural, automatic extension of who you are. The person who works out for 30 minutes every single day will completely transform their health, while the person who tries to run a marathon once a month without training will only end up injured and discouraged. If you want to build something that lasts, you must stop looking for the grand gesture and start falling in love with the quiet, daily practice. The human brain is remarkably poor at understanding exponential growth. We are linear creatures living in a world that operates on compounding effects. When we look at a single unit of time, like 30 minutes, our immediate instinct is to measure its value purely by what can be accomplished within that isolated window. We look at 30 minutes and think, I can only read a few pages of a book, write 2 paragraphs of an essay, or learn 3 lines of code. Because the immediate return on investment seems completely negligible, we make the tragic mistake of discounting its long-term worth. We fall into the trap of believing that if an action does not yield a significant visible result right now, it is not worth doing at all. This is the great illusion of daily life that prevents the vast majority of people from ever realizing their true potential. We completely fail to understand the mathematics of accumulation, which reveal that time is a massive magnifier. When you take a small, seemingly insignificant daily habit and multiply it across the expanse of a year, the numbers shift from trivial to absolutely staggering. To truly grasp the power of the compounding effect of time, we must look closely at the math behind the 30-minute rule. 30 minutes a day sustained every single week adds up to 3.5 hours of highly focused, deliberate practice. If you maintain this unyielding rhythm for an entire year, you accumulate over 180 hours of pure development. Now, 180 hours is a purely abstract number until you contextualize it within real-world achievements. To put it into a clear perspective, 180 hours of focused study is the exact equivalent of taking 4 full-time, upper-level college courses at a university. Imagine walking up to someone and telling them that you managed to complete an entire semester of higher education on top of your normal daily responsibilities without ever stepping foot inside a classroom or disrupting your lifestyle. That is precisely what you accomplish when you simply reclaim a fraction of the time most people waste scrolling mindlessly through social media applications or watching television. Furthermore, consider what 180 hours looks like when applied to reading deep, nonfiction literature. The average adult reads at a speed that allows them to finish a comprehensive, insightful book in about 5 to 7 hours of focused attention. With 180 hours at your disposal, you possess the time required to read anywhere between 25 and 35 deep, impactful books in a single year. The average person reads less than 2 books a year. By dedicating just 30 minutes a day to reading, you place yourself light years ahead of the general populace in terms of knowledge acquisition, cognitive vocabulary, and conceptual understanding of the world. If you apply those same hours to learning a new technical skill, such as video editing, data analysis, or a foreign language, 180 hours is more than enough time to move from a complete novice to a highly competent practitioner. You are essentially giving yourself an entirely new career asset or a deeply valuable life capability completely free of charge, using nothing but the margins of your day. The real beauty of this compounding effect is that it happens quietly beneath the surface of your awareness. In the first week, you notice absolutely no change. In the first month, the progress is so subtle that you might feel tempted to quit, thinking that your efforts are pointless. But this is exactly how compounding works. It tracks along a flat, invisible line for months before suddenly curving sharply upward, while everyone else around you is waiting for a massive mythical block of open time to arrive, waiting for a vacation, a long weekend, or a lighter workload that never actually comes. You are quietly banking small chunks of time day after day. You are utilizing the hidden cracks in the daily schedule. While the rest of the world is paralyzed by the sheer size of their ambitions, you are steadily building a massive mountain out of tiny grains of sand. When people eventually look at you a year from now, they will call your transformation an overnight success. They will assume you possess a rare talent or an extraordinary amount of luck. But the truth will be far simpler. You simply understood the mathematics of time, and you had the patience to let your 30 minutes compound into an unstoppable force. We often make the mistake of viewing our daily habits through a purely transactional lens. We look at a routine like the 30-minute rule and assume that its only purpose is external utility, that we are simply trading 30 minutes of our time for 30 minutes of output, whether that output is a page written, a video edited, or a concept memorized. But this superficial perspective completely misses the deep psychological architecture of human behavior. Every single action you take is not just a task being completed. It is a message you are broadcasting directly to your own subconscious mind. When you sit down every single day at the exact same time to invest 30 minutes into your own growth, you are doing something far more profound than just learning a new skill. You are actively participating in a continuous process of identity-driven transformation. You are restructuring your internal self-image and redefining the very boundaries of who you believe you are. Every behavior we exhibit is a manifestation of our identity. It is incredibly difficult to sustain a habit that runs counter to the deeply held beliefs you have about yourself. If you view yourself as someone who is inherently disorganized, lazy, or incapable of long-term focus, any attempt to force a massive change will inevitably collapse under the weight of that self-perception. This is why standard goal setting so often fails. It focuses entirely on what we want to achieve rather than who we need to become. The 30-minute rule reverses this dynamic entirely by focusing on the identity first. When you show up every day, without exception, you are casting a powerful internal vote of confidence for a brand new identity. You are generating concrete, undeniable evidence that you are a disciplined, reliable, and deeply focused individual. The subconscious mind does not care about your intentions, your wishes, or your empty promises. It only cares about your track record. When you build a track record of showing up for yourself day after day, your self-narrative begins to fundamentally shift. This accumulation of daily evidence is how authentic self-trust is built. Most people live in a perpetual state of broken promises with themselves. They wake up in the morning and promise they will read tonight, or they promise they will start that project tomorrow, only to break that promise the moment they feel tired or distracted. Every time you break a promise to yourself, your self-esteem takes a subtle but devastating hit. You learn to stop believing your own word, which breeds a deep sense of insecurity and paralysis. But when you honor a non-negotiable 30-minute commitment, even on the days when you are exhausted, bored, or completely uninspired, you heal that relationship with yourself. You build an unshakable belief in your own reliability. You begin to look at yourself in the mirror and realize, I am the kind of person who does what I say I am going to do. I am a person who invests in my own future, regardless of how I feel in the moment. This shift in identity changes everything about how you navigate the world. When your self-image transitions from a passive observer to an active architect of your own life, your threshold for discomfort changes. You stop looking for excuses and start looking for execution. The confidence generated by mastering those 30 minutes begins to bleed into every other area of your existence. It affects how you show up at your job, how you communicate in your relationships, and how you handle unexpected adversity. You are no longer acting out of a place of desperation, trying to force an external result to prove your worth. Instead, you are acting out of a place of deep alignment, simply allowing your daily actions to reflect the disciplined person you have already become inside. The ultimate value of the 30-minute rule is not the external asset you build or the specific knowledge you accumulate over a year. The true reward is the profound psychological transformation that takes place beneath the surface. You completely rewrite your personal identity, transforming yourself from someone who merely dreams about change into someone who systematically executes it every single day. The greatest barrier to human achievement is almost never a lack of talent, a lack of resources, or a lack of genuine desire. The real enemy that paralyzes most of us before we even get started is cognitive friction. Cognitive friction is that heavy, invisible wall of mental resistance that builds up whenever we contemplate doing something difficult, unfamiliar, or incredibly large. When we set massive, highly ambiguous goals for ourselves, such as deciding that we want to completely pivot our careers, write a comprehensive 300-page book, or build a highly profitable online business from scratch, our brains do not view these ambitions as exciting opportunities. Instead, the primitive architecture of the human brain processes these enormous goals as massive, overwhelming threats to our comfort and energy reserves. The sheer scale of the objective creates an immediate sense of psychological overwhelm because the destination feels so incredibly far away and the path to get there seems so complex. We become completely paralyzed by the choices before us. We don't know where to start. We don't know what step to take first. And so we make the tragic decision to do absolutely nothing at all. This is exactly where the strategic design of the 30-minute rule becomes an absolute game changer. What this rule beautifully accomplishes is the total reduction of cognitive friction by drastically lowering the barrier to entry. It takes a massive, terrifying mountain of work and systematically shrinks it down into a tiny, completely manageable interval of time that the human brain can easily accept. When you tell yourself that you need to sit down and master an entirely new technical industry, your brain will actively fight you with procrastination, distraction, and excuses. But when you tell your brain, we are only going to sit at this desk and focus on this one specific thing for exactly 30 minutes and then we're completely done, your entire neurological defense mechanism stands down. Anyone can endure 30 minutes of focused effort. It feels incredibly safe, highly achievable, and entirely within your immediate control. It bypasses our natural internal resistance to change because it demands very little emotional energy or raw willpower to simply initiate. By focusing entirely on a short block of time rather than an overwhelming outcome, you completely eliminate the anxiety of perfectionism. When we focus on massive outcomes, we constantly worry about whether we are doing it perfectly, whether we are moving fast enough, or how much work is still left to do. This constant future-oriented anxiety ruins our ability to focus in the present moment. The 30-minute rule completely detaches your mind from the stress of the final destination and pins your awareness entirely to the immediate process. For those 30 minutes, your only job in the entire world is to show up and run the clock. You don't have to fix your whole life today. You just have to give your undivided attention to a single task until the timer goes off. This radical simplicity frees up an incredible amount of cognitive bandwidth, allowing you to enter a state of deep, high-quality focus that is completely impossible to achieve when your mind is cluttered with the stress of a massive goal. The most profound realization you will have once you adopt this rule is that the hardest part of any journey is never the work itself. It is the simple act of starting. Once you actually clear that initial hurdle of cognitive friction and engage in the task for just 5 or 10 minutes, a powerful psychological phenomenon known as momentum kicks in. The human mind naturally wants to finish things that it has already begun. You will frequently find that once your 30-minute timer goes off, the initial resistance has completely vanished, your focus is sharp, and you actually want to keep moving forward. But even on the days when you stop exactly at the 30-minute mark, you have still won a massive psychological victory. You have successfully broken the cycle of procrastination by systematically reducing your life's greatest ambitions into non-negotiable. Bite-sized intervals, you completely strip away the power that overwhelm holds over your life, turning action into an effortless, daily default. We live in a world that's profoundly obsessed with milestones, arrivals, and finish lines. From a very young age, we are conditioned to believe that happiness and satisfaction are things that exist exclusively at the destination. We tell ourselves that we will finally be happy when we get that promotion, when we reach a certain number in our bank account, when we cross the stage at graduation, or when we launch that business. This outcome-oriented mindset creates a highly toxic psychological dynamic where we spend 99% of our time stuck in a state of stressful, unfulfilled striving, all for the sake of a fleeting 1% moment of achievement. The tragic truth of human psychology is that once we finally cross that finish line, the joy we expected to feel evaporates almost immediately. Due to a phenomenon known as hedonic adaptation, our brains quickly normalize the new achievement. The initial rush fades, and we are instantly left looking for the next external milestone to fill the void. The 30-minute rule offers a profound philosophical antidote to this endless cycle of frustration by shifting the entire source of human fulfillment from the distant outcome to the daily process. When you commit to this rule, you are making a conscious decision to stop outsourcing your happiness to an unpredictable future and start finding it in the quiet, predictable joy of daily progress. Human beings are deeply wired for growth. Neurologically, our brains release dopamine, the chemical associated with motivation, pleasure, and satisfaction, not when we actually achieve a massive goal, but when we perceive that we are actively moving toward it. True, deep-seated fulfillment is not a static trophy that you pick up at the end of a long journey. It is the living, breathing sensation of becoming slightly better today than you were yesterday. When you step away from your desk after 30 minutes of deep, uninterrupted focus, you experience a clean, authentic sense of pride that cannot be replicated by any external praise. You have moved the needle. You have expanded your mind, sharpened a skill, or solved a complex problem. This process-driven fulfillment creates a profound sense of internal peace because it is entirely within your control. External outcomes are always subject to the chaotic whims of the world. You can do everything right and still miss out on a promotion due to corporate politics, or watch a business venture struggle because of an unpredictable shift in the market. If your entire self, worth, and happiness are tied exclusively to those volatile external results, you will live a life filled with chronic anxiety and helplessness. But the 30-minute rule cannot be taken away from you by external circumstances. Whether the market is up or down, whether the world notices your efforts or ignores them completely, You still have the absolute power to sit down for 30 minutes and honor your commitment to growth. The daily practice itself becomes the reward. The simple act of execution becomes your sanctuary, a dedicated space where you are completely insulated from the noise and pressure of the outside world. When you learn to fall in love with the daily structure of progress, your relationship with time completely changes. You no longer view the days as empty, repetitive hurdles that you have to aggressively burn through just to get to a weekend or a vacation. Instead, every single day becomes deeply meaningful because it holds a dedicated pocket of personal evolution. You begin to look forward to those 30 minutes as the most grounded, satisfying part of your routine. You realize that the ultimate value of the journey was never the final destination you were chasing. It was the slow, beautiful, compounding alchemy of the daily practice that completely reshaped who you are from the inside out. By anchoring your fulfillment directly to the unyielding rhythm of daily progress, you transform growth from a stressful chore into a sustainable, lifelong source of genuine joy. When you look at the entirety of this simple mechanism, you realize that the 30 minutes rule is not merely a tool for productivity. It is a profound philosophy of life. It is an acknowledgement that greatness is not an act, but a habit. It is the understanding that the massive, overwhelming changes we deeply desire in our lives do not require us to wait for a perfect, mythical moment that may never arrive. The true beauty of this practice is that it democratizes success. It strips away the excuses of a chaotic schedule, a lack of resources, or the paralyzing fear of starting too big. It hands the power of transformation completely back to you, asking for nothing more than a tiny 2% fraction of your day. By committing to this daily pocket of deliberate focus, you systematically silence the voice of procrastination, break the fragile illusion of intensity, and tap into the unstoppable mathematics of compounding time. You stop measuring your worth by the distant, volatile finish lines of the world, and you start finding deep, unshakable fulfillment in the quiet dignity of daily progress. A year from now, you will inevitably look back on your life. The time will pass regardless of what you choose to do with it. The only question that remains is who you will choose to become within those passing hours. Do not wait for the grand gesture. Do not wait for the perfect conditions. Step away from the noise, claim your time, and let the small, unyielding choices build the extraordinary life you were meant to lead. All it takes, and all it has ever taken, is 30 minutes.